In a few hours from now, the United Nations Security Council will decide the fate of the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar. China is the only permanent member which has so far blocked the listing of Masood Azhar, who is the chief of the Pakistan-based terror outfit Jaish-e-Mohammed. China has already blocked the move 3 times, and as per its latest hints, it could do so again. Just ahead of that vote, China hinted that it may once again block the bid to designate Masood Azhar as a global terrorist. China's foreign ministry spokesperson said, and I'm quoting, "The solution that is acceptable to all sides is conducive to resolve the issue," unquote. Now, while India has pushed for the sanctioning of Masood Azhar, Pakistan has continued to get Beijing support on blocking that bid. Now, China has been insisting that the solution should be acceptable to all sides. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman saying, "I want to say that China always adopts a responsible attitude, engage in consultations with various parties and properly deal with this issue. The discussions must follow the rules and procedures of the relevant bodies, and only the solution that is acceptable to all sides is conducive for resolving the issue." And what do those indications really tell us? We spoke to Atul Aneja earlier, a senior Indian journalist in Beijing, and asked him why China is blocking India's bid to ban Masood Azhar and what he makes of the latest indications that are coming in and what Beijing stands to gain, if at all, from blocking the bid.
The Chinese here are playing a long game. And after India, which will obviously object and protest in case, as we assume, that China will not allow Masood Azhar to be designated as an international terrorist, it would probably try another round of engagement where it would try and build consensus through a very active diplomatic initiative between India and Pakistan. In the long run, China wants both India and Pakistan to be on board its Eurasia-centric project and wean away India from getting too close to the United States, Japan, Australia, the Quad, and the international and the Western alliance system. So I suppose we have not seen an end to it. Whether it's going to succeed or not is a million-dollar question. As of now, India goes into election mode, so I doubt anything much is going to happen from the Indian side. But I think around summer, after the election results are over, we might see another round of diplomacy where China makes an attempt to reconcile differences between India and between Pakistan and India. Not sure whether it's going to work, but the Chinese have actually taken a very high-profile stance now to interject in the India-Pakistan equation, something which they have never done before in terms of visibility, as they're doing now.
So what exactly does the listing of a terrorist as a global terrorist at the United Nations really mean? What happens if sanctions are imposed against the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief by the UN Security Council? Firstly, there is an assets freeze. All member states of the United Nations are required to freeze without delays the funds and other financial assets or economic resources if designated individuals and entities are coming under that scanner. Travel ban. All member states are required to prevent the entry into or transit through their territories by the designated individuals. An arms embargo also follows. All member states are required to prevent the direct or indirect supply, sale and transfer of arms and all related materials. So that's the multi-pronged approach that will be resorted to if Masood Azhar is listed as a global terrorist at the United Nations. All eyes, of course, on the UN Security Council, but it is Pakistan's stand on Masood Azhar's listing that continues to remain unclear. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has said earlier in an interview that Pakistan will not put its friends in trouble. But Pakistan's Foreign Ministry spokesperson had told WION that Islamabad's decision on Azhar's listing would be in the country's interest. What does that mean? Pakistan has remained ambiguous. Meanwhile, China's junior foreign minister was in Islamabad recently, sources telling us that the issue of Masood Azhar's listing was a part of that discussion. And in the backdrop of those developments, India has slammed Pakistan at the 40th session of the UN Human Rights Council for its sustained support to terrorism and raking up the Jammu and Kashmir issue. It of course comes just ahead of the decision on the listing of Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar. An Indian diplomat representative said that Islamabad continues supporting terror attacks against India, the latest being the Pulwama terror attack on the February 14th. Mini Devi Kumam reminded Pakistan of its infamous distinction of hosting 132 UN-designated terrorists and 22 terrorist entities.
Pakistan's continued support to cross-border terrorism is the main challenge to protecting the human rights of our citizens in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. The confirmation of using UN-prescribed terror organizations, Jaish-e-Mohammed, as an instrument of state policy by Pakistani military and political leadership is already in public domain.
And on the issue of Islamabad raking up the plight of Indian minorities, the Indian diplomat refocused the attention on Pakistan's treatment of minorities and their persecution under the blasphemy law and the denial of basic rights.
Pakistan is known to the international community for its acts of aggressions, harboring safe havens for terrorists, military courts trying civilians, harassment of minorities through blasphemy law, forced conversions and marriages of minorities.
Meanwhile, the sentiment was also echoed by Kashmiri political activists and intellectuals who called out Pakistan's duplicity and hypocrisy, as they called it, on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir.
Firstly, Pakistan invaded Jammu and Kashmir in 1947. Since then, it has been an occupier, and now it's a broker, as it is negotiating the sale of Gilgit-Baltistan to Beijing. Mr. President, Pakistan has forcibly divided Jammu and Kashmir while it continues fomenting terrorism and keeps deceiving the world by manifesting itself as a self-styled protector of the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir for over 7 decades.
On to Nigeria for now, where a 3-story building in the largest city of Lagos has crashed. 8 people, including 5 school children, are reported to have died as a result of that building collapse. Massive rescue operations are underway to pull out the survivors. The building housed a primary school. Many are still believed to be trapped under the debris. These visuals are coming to you from Lagos. The rescuers are climbing over piles of broken concrete and twisted metal, trying to pull out the survivors. In the latest that's coming in, as many as 8 people, including 5 school children, are reported to have died. Authorities, of course, at the moment prioritizing the rescue of the survivors and also looking at what led to the collapse of that building. There has been a shooting at a school in Brazil. Reports coming in saying that at least 8 people, including 5 children, were killed in that shooting incident. 2 young people were seen entering the building and firing. Police say that 2 adolescents wearing face masks entered the building and started shooting at around 9:30 a.m. local time. The pair eventually shot and killed themselves. An unknown number of additional children were also shot at. This incident coming in from the WION Fineprint elementary school. Those injured have been taken to the nearby hospital. The state of those injured is not immediately known. Police and firefighters did not immediately respond to requests for comments. School shootings are rare in Brazil, even though the country is one of the world's most violent, with more annual homicides than any other. The last major school shooting was in 2011, when 12 children were shot dead by a former pupil in Rio de Janeiro. This latest incident coming in from Brazil, where as many as 5 children have been killed. This shooting incident that took place at about 9:30 a.m. local time. 2 individuals were seen entering the school complex. This is the WION Fineprint elementary school in Brazil. The 2 individuals were seen entering, firing with their weapons, and then eventually killed themselves. 3 days after the Ethiopian airline crash, India finally decided to ground all Boeing 737 MAXs. India's aviation regulator has effectively barred the Boeing 737 MAX fleet from flying over Indian airspace after a meeting of the agency's top heads. The Director General of Civil Aviation said that no Boeing 737 MAX jets will take off from or land at any Indian airport.
All the aircraft, MAX, they have been shut. by 2:30. And then, as you know, that we have also taken a notum that no aircraft should overfly or come to India or fly outside. So that notum has till 4 that was there. So everybody, even with the international players, they had enough time to adjust to that. So after 4, the AI has passed orders to everyone that no aircraft with MAX, this VT MAX aircraft, that has to be accepted. So that will be fully complied with.
The aviation regulator had decided to suspend the aircraft until appropriate modification and safety measures are put in place to ensure their safety operation. In India, SpiceJet and Jet Airways operate the 737 MAX 8 aircraft. SpiceJet has 13 aircraft of this model in its 75-strong fleet. Jet Airways has 5 of the MAX 8s. Following that order, SpiceJet issued a statement, and I'm quoting from that. SpiceJet has suspended the Boeing 737 MAX operations following DGCA's decision to ground the aircraft. Safety and security of our passengers, crew and operations are of utmost importance to us, and we will be working with the regulator and the manufacturer to attain normalcy in our operations. We are confident of accommodating the vast majority of our passengers and minimizing inconvenience. That's what SpiceJet has said in its latest statement, but it earlier defended the Boeing 737 MAX, calling the model highly sophisticated. And even as an increasing number of countries are cracking the whip and suspending the use of the Boeing 737 MAX 8 model, the relationship between U.S. President and Boeing is also coming under the scanner. Boeing literally ferries American presidents in a modified Boeing 747, also known as the Air Force One. But it cannot be that fact alone that has so far prevented the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration from grounding the B-737 MAX. The reason appears more political than operational. Here's why. Ties between Boeing and the current U.S. President, Donald Trump, run deep. Trump is an aviation enthusiast and once owned the Trump Shuttle airline. In its 3-year-long existence, the airline was in close contact with Boeing. Trump also used a personal Boeing 757 before he assumed office in January 2017. Trump's connection with Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg is not new either. Trump had personally negotiated with Muilenburg to try and lower the cost of a future version of the U.S. presidential aircraft. Then in July last year, Boeing won a $3.9 billion contract to replace the 2 Air Force One jets. If signposting is anything to go by, then Trump's preference for Boeing has been more than apparent. The U.S. president has used Boeing products and sites as backdrops for major presidential announcements. In July last year, in fact, Trump used his visit to a Boeing plant in St. Louis to talk about the impact of his tax overhaul bill. But Trump is not alone in the Boeing boat. There are other top White House officials who have close ties with the aircraft manufacturer. Take Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan, for instance. He worked for Boeing for 31 years before joining the Pentagon. Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has been nominated by Boeing to join its board of directors. Boeing's stature makes it a natural choice for American administrators to cozy up to. It is the United States' second largest defense contractor. The company received $104 billion in unclassified defense contracts between 2014 and 2018. It's no surprise then that the Trump administration has repeatedly urged its allies to buy Boeing products. Kuwait, for instance, according to reports, it was Trump who had pressed the Gulf states emir to proceed with a long-delayed deal with Boeing for its FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jets. It's interesting to also note here that American airport exports have so far been spared from retaliatory Chinese tariffs. Boeing is one of the largest American exporters to China, and Muilenburg has publicly said that Chinese purchases of its Made in America aircraft could be part of the trade deal currently being negotiated by Washington, D.C. and Beijing. And we earlier spoke to Mikey Kay, former Royal Air Force pilot and investigative journalist. We asked him what his assessment is so far of how risky the Boeing 737 MAX 8 is and what he makes of the action taken by the countries across the world so far.
I think when we're talking about the term unsafe, in aviation terms, I think the professionals would use the term risk. And risk is probability versus consequence. And I think that's how the progress or the forward decision-making going on beyond the Ethiopian Airlines crash, the 737 MAX 8 crash, should be assessed. It should be through a process of delicate risk assessment. And what do I mean by that? I mean that as it stands right now, there is limited evidence as to what actually happened to the Ethiopian Airlines crash coming out of Addis Ababa en route to Nairobi. The two black boxes, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, have been recovered. And the latest reporting on the data assimilation of those two boxes is that the Ethiopians don't have the technology or the best technology to actually gain that data, and they're going to send it out of the country for that data to be analyzed. Probably, I would suggest, to the United States, the NTSB, who have all the technology to be able to gain the data from these two black boxes as quickly as possible. So I think when we're talking about, is the aircraft safe to fly based on what countries are deciding to ground it? So the UK has decided to ground it, Australia has, China has. There are many, many countries that have taken the precautionary measure to ground the 737 MAX 8. But the United States has decided not to do that. The FAA has decided that it isn't going, at the moment, to ground those aircraft.